Okay. Okay, fantastic. I want to welcome everybody to our Homeschooling Where to Begin program. My name is Joy Fleischacker, and I'm the homeschool liaison with the Pikes Peak Library District. And it's my pleasure to work with so many wonderful families in the community. And we truly miss seeing everybody, but hopefully that'll change soon. I just wanted to let you know that our presenters and panelists are on camera today, and everybody else in the webinar is without a camera and a mic. So if you do have questions as we go, please feel free to enter them in the chat, and we'll try and address those at the end of the program. And just to give you a quick overview, we're going to have Theresa Klinitski, our homeschool consultant, giving an overview of homeschooling. And then the next section is going to be hearing from a panel of parents who are currently homeschooling and really using many different philosophies and practices. So I want to thank all of the panelists for taking the time today and sharing their story and providing the support to everyone else. I think it's really exciting. And then after that, I'm just gonna give you a really quick overview of some of the things we offer from the library. And then we will have time to address questions at the end. So with no further ado, I'm gonna turn things over to Teresa.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here, and thanks, Joy, for still including me. My name's Theresa Klinitski, and I have 4 students that I homeschooled from elementary through high school graduation. My youngest is about to turn 20 in 2 weeks, which is so hard to believe. But I'm thankful that Joy still invites me to come along for this journey with her and all of you to learn about all the new things. Homeschooling is growing and changing so rapidly that it's really important to come together and share information so that we all know. Along the journey, I homeschooled for about 22 years total, start to finish, and we used all types of curriculum. Plus, I created my own curriculum. We used public online programs. We did some homeschool programs. I organized co-ops. I also consulted with all different types of schools to start their own programs or on how to support their local homeschoolers. So I've really looked at this from almost every angle. And then my children have taken advantage of as much as possible. That was one benefit I saw to homeschooling, was that the world was our oyster. And if you were going to offer it, we're trying it out if it fit for us. So we've done concurrent enrollment programs. Like I said, we've done the public homeschool part-time programs. 2 of my children actually graduated high school with their associate's degree. And all of my children met my expectations, and they're all successful, happy adults, and they're a joy to be around. So I achieved my mission as being a mom / homeschool mom. So I guess maybe now I'm considered as retired. But I'm thankful that Joy still includes me, because I love talking homeschooling. I love answering questions. I love supporting you guys. So like Joy said, any questions that you have, put them in the chat and we'll address them either as we go along or at the end. At the end, also, I'll give you my email address. So if you have more specific questions, feel free to email me. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to support. I'm happy to give you my opinion. So let's get started. All right, we kind of went over our outline. I'm really just going to go through this. What is homeschooling? How do you tell if it's right for your student? The rules and regulations, which we all need to know, and then how to get started. And then we're going to launch into our panel. So that how to get started question and kind of what it could look like, our panelists are going to answer totally and completely. I'm very excited for this today. All right, so first up on the list, what's homeschooling? Homeschooling has really taken on a whole new definition these days. You know, parents, when the pandemic happened and everybody had to transfer home to do their online or public school, people were saying that they were homeschooling. And, it really kind of got murky and confusing. If kids were enrolled in a public online school, some parents were calling that homeschooling. So I really, just for the record, I want to lay this out, that the differences or the deciding factor is if you are receiving services from a public school. So if you report to your child's grades, you turn in paperwork, you're following their plan, then you are not technically homeschooling. You're part of a public, a charter, or a private school, or maybe an online school, you're doing remote learning, or you're part of a virtual school. So this means that the school is fully responsible for educating your students. They're giving you all the curriculum, you're checking the box that you did it, and sending them back information for doing it. And they're not charging you for the curriculum. That would be another big piece. If you're not reporting or receiving services from a public school, full services, then you're either homeschooling, some people call it home-based education, or unschooling. And in that case, you are fully responsible for educating your children. Now, in this case, you may be participating in an enrichment program or maybe concurrent enrollment classes, but those you have the power to pick or choose and to do or not do. And so therefore, you still are considered homeschooling. So the next big question that I'm asked frequently is homeschooling right for my student? Like, how do I know? How do I know if this is going to work for my kid? And that is a tough question. In the past, homeschoolers have made up about 3% of school-age children. However, due to the pandemic, that number has jumped to 12%. 12% of school-age children are now reported as homeschoolers. So experts are actually expecting that to grow maybe another 10% this next year, which I find really exciting because that means more support out there for you. More support, more friends, more people to be part of your tribe, to walk this path with you. And that's exciting for me. In the past, it sometimes was difficult to find others who were doing things the same way. Now, with more homeschoolers homeschooling, I think it'll be easier to find people who are doing the things you're doing. Also, people who tried it last year and realized that they liked it, that's very exciting too. We want that. We want them to give it a try. And the pandemic gave people the opportunity, if they were maybe on the fence, to jump in and give it a try anyway and see that they can really be successful. It's not that hard. All right, so I put together this list of reasons, although this is not comprehensive or all-inclusive, but these are some of it. I mean, and it can be as simple as, I just want more flexibility in my daily schedule. I want to see my kids more. That can be a reason to try homeschooling. Don't make it into some big issue. It can just be, my kid is struggling in school and I don't know what's happening there. So if I bring them home, then I can support them 100% of the time. So it really, your reason is personalized to you. The other piece of this is that even though homeschooling can seem overwhelming, it's not a permanent choice. If you choose that this year, you can you can make a different choice. You reevaluate. I know with my kids, every single summer we talked about it. What went well last year? What do we like? Do we want to keep doing things the same, or do we need to make a change? Do you want to try public school? And if so, what is it that you're missing from public school? I know that became an interesting question with some of my children. And I had a daughter, she was going into second grade and she was done homeschooling. I don't want to do it anymore. And so I couldn't understand why. We spent every Friday at the zoo. We went to the art museum. We were always doing fun things. And so when I dug in and I said, well, what is it about school? Why do you want to go? And she's like, well, I want a backpack. And I was like, I can get you a backpack. So we got a backpack, and, she had just connected that, if I go to school, I get a backpack. So we fixed the problem. She had a backpack and we still homeschooled. But it is interesting to kind of dig in and get to know your kids a little bit, and what they're worried about maybe missing or not missing. A different daughter was afraid. She wanted to go to high school because she didn't want to miss out on the school dances and the school sports and all of that. And so we talked about that, and she didn't want to go to the classes at school. She just wanted to be part of the extracurriculars. So we talked about different options. You can go to our local high school and join those clubs, or join a sports team, or, try out for a sports team if that's what you want to do. Or, you have friends who are here and involved in public school. You could go with them. And that's what she ended up doing. She took dance classes at a local dance studio. And so she ended up going to several different proms and high school dances with different friends that went to those schools. So she got to try out a ton of different events and activities and go to sporting events, and really got to have that experience that she felt she was missing without having to jump in and do all of school. So the cool thing about homeschooling is that we all have the freedom to constantly evaluate and make the best choice for our family and for each child in that family. So don't hesitate to change one way, try something out, and then change a different way. All right, so let's launch into the boring rules and regulations. So thankfully, Colorado is not a super strict homeschooling state. But if you want to research all of the states, especially Colorado, the internet is your best friend. And there's a website, hslda.org. I'll actually put it in the chat. The Homeschool Legal Defense Organization. And you can search by each state, and they'll tell you what the rules and regulations are, which states are more restrictive, which ones are more open with the regulations. And like I said, Colorado's pretty open, I feel. So there's a few things about the Colorado homeschool law. The state has not made any changes to these homeschool rules, regulations, in light of the pandemic. They're the same regardless. So they remain intact and unchanged. So when you homeschool, the big piece of that is that you are accepting all responsibilities and costs for educating your student. And that's a big piece for some parents, that responsibility piece. So if your student is struggling and you need to get them help, it's up to you to get the help. The school doesn't have to provide that help for you. You also need to submit a notice of intent, or an NOI. You submit it each school year for your students that are between the ages of 6 and 16. It needs to include the student's name, their age, their place of residence, so your home address, number of hours of yearly attendance. So for anyone who's wondering, you just put down 688. Those are the required school hours in Colorado. So you put that down. Let's see. Oh, and then you have to have students tested or evaluated at the completion of odd school years. So that would be 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, and 11th. And the caveat is that your student must score above the 13th percentile on a standardized test. There are several tests that you can give to your students. I know PPLD has a list or a place where you can research this. The Colorado Department of Education also has a list. The rule or the requirement is a test has to be nationally standardized. So that would be, that would not include our state test. So I don't know what they're calling it right now. It was a CSAP for years, and then they changed it. But whatever they're calling it now, it doesn't count for homeschoolers because it's not nationally standardized. It's only for Colorado. So don't call your local school district and ask if your kids can take that terrible test. So you can administer tests at home with your kids. So you kind of take that test anxiety out. The other piece of that is that you can have your students evaluated by a qualified evaluator. And what that is they come in and meet with you and your student to look at the progress that they've made over the last school year. That to me is a really cool thing because students then get to show off what they've learned all year. They get to actually show their projects or their math work or this cool paper that they wrote. And the evaluator, what they're looking for is students who are meeting the requirements and making progress. So they're looking for students that are making progress. They're not looking for perfection. The other cool part is that a qualified evaluator is usually a teacher. They need a teaching license or a master's in education. And they, a lot of times they love working with homeschoolers. They're on your side and they can give you input if you have questions. You know, like I had a struggling reader, and so I was able to ask the evaluator questions. You know, we're making progress, but it's slow. Do you recommend anything else that I can try? You know, what ideas do you have? So evaluators are useful, I feel, to your homeschooling as a whole. So a lot of years, actually, I would do both. I like the standardized test because it helped me kind of track the data and analytics on my student because I'm a logical thinker, but also the evaluator really helped out. So PPLD has lists of all of those. The other piece, the other caveat that not everybody talks about is that the Colorado Homeschool Law does not apply if you are a Colorado licensed teacher. You are not technically homeschooling. You are homeschooling, but you're just doing school at home. And so you don't have to follow the rules. You don't have to test or evaluate your kids, and you don't have to fill out a notice of intent. So just so you're aware of that, if you're a licensed Colorado teacher. The other piece is that if you're pulling your student out of public school to homeschool, if you're transitioning to homeschool, if your student has prior truancy issues with their public school, they may require some additional documentation from you. And that's written into the law. So it's their way of double checking that you're actually going to be doing school and you have a plan at home. So you can just be prepared for that if you plan to pull your students out of school, disenroll them. All right, so now how do you get started? This is a big question too. Once you decide you want to homeschool, the next part is, what does this look like? What do we do tomorrow morning when we get up and decide it's time for school? So I would recommend finding support. PPLD is amazing. They have great resources and people who love homeschoolers. Hopefully they'll be back in person because that's my favorite way to connect with them. But I know they have online resources and you can talk to librarians virtually. So that piece is critical. The other part is local homeschool support groups. Facebook, I believe, is probably the best place to find local homeschool support groups. Our panelists might have some other information, so they can add that in when we're talking to them. But when I was doing this, we used to be just an email list, and then we moved kind of online and we'd all set up little websites, but then it moved to Facebook, and that seemed pretty easy for everyone to find. And so if you're looking for online on Facebook or on the internet, search Homeschooling Colorado or Homeschooling Colorado Springs, and the ones that are active and busy will pop up. And if you join one or two, they're going to share the information with you. So you join one or two and then you start asking, you know, I'm looking for support in this area, or I'm looking for a new math curriculum. Who can help me? Homeschool parents love to share. We love to support each other. So just put it out there, just ask. The other piece is to reach out to your friends and family. It might surprise you that there's those among you, your friend group, your family group, who are either considering homeschooling or already starting it, and you just don't know about it yet. So reach out and ask. If you have, you know, community groups or church groups, put it out there and ask. That's just another way to find people that are already in your circle. The homeschool communities, I mentioned that before, but if you're looking for specific, if you have students who have special needs or maybe have special interests or they're at a certain age, put that out in the homeschool group and they'll point you in the right direction. Co-op groups, we used to have several around town. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like in the time of COVID, but we'll ask our panelists a little more about that. And then the public school enrichment programs. A lot of times with the public school enrichment programs, they also offer some parent support. So they're good places to ask questions or, you know, hook up, meet other parents when you're dropping off or picking up, or figure out who your kids are making friends with and find out who their parents are. So you can schedule other play dates and pick their brains about what they're doing. So, you know, it might take a minute, but it's definitely worth the effort to find the support you need. All right, the next step in how to get started is to figure out where your student is. Assess their ability. So you're going to determine their developmental skills. There's a lot of charts out there, but you want to see where they are. Are they on track or are they going to require some extra assistance in some areas? So you want to find a website that's going to compare their age to the developmental skills they should have achieved. And this will help you pinpoint maybe the areas to focus on: fine motor skills, large motor skills, critical thinking skills, but it kind of helps you see where your kid might need a little extra support. And then the next big piece, which I feel like a lot of people zero in on first, is the academic skill levels. So you want to try to avoid simply going off the universally accepted age equals grade level norm like they do in public school. We all know that isn't right. And our kids are all over the map. So most curriculum companies, if you're going to order curriculum from them or enroll in their programs online, they focus on math and English academic skills. And most of the curriculum websites will offer pre-assessments that will help you determine the level of your student. So my advice is to have your student complete more than one assessment in both math and English. Make it fun, make it a game, chunk it up. Use assessments from curriculum providers that maybe you don't even plan to purchase curriculum from, but it's just helping you get some feedback about where your student is, what subjects they're comfortable with. You're going to learn right off the bat if your kid hates math or loves math when you put a math test in front of them. So this is really your chance to figure out, where are you? You know, you're just trying to determine a level so you know where to start. Once you give your students, have them take a few different ones, space them out over several days, do some at the park, some in the car, some at the kitchen table, make it fun. And then bring all the results together and you look at it. Maybe average them, maybe add in what you already know about your student so that you can decide what level to begin at, especially in math and English. Those are kind of important. And keep in mind that this level can be adjusted as you need. So when your student gets into the curriculum, you're going to find out, is this easier than I thought it was going to be or more difficult than I thought it was going to be? And then make some changes. Don't be afraid. Make changes. You don't want to give your student a curriculum that's way too difficult, because then we are just causing frustration where it doesn't need to happen. So scoot them back a little bit, give them something that's a little bit easier and they're feeling success with. So once you figure out math and English levels, then you can generally go off of those for science and history. So science will match up pretty closely with their math grade level or skill level. And history you can align with English. History is a lot of reading, so you want to make sure their reading level is appropriate and they can handle the history curriculum and it's not above their head. Keep in mind that the past, year and a half has been a little crazy and not normal. So don't be surprised if this has affected your student in more ways than we've expected. You know, their academic level might have dropped. It might not be where you thought it was. And that's okay. This is your time to figure that out. And this is your time to give them that extra space, that extra support, that extra review. You'll see that if you slow down a little bit now, that your kids, once they get it, a lot of times they'll pick it up really quickly. Once you've given them a chance to get those basics underneath them. And you've established a new school routine, you're also going to be doing that, which is going to look different than the last 2 years. So definitely give everybody a break. Take a big deep breath and move along at their pace. Don't push. All right, so now once you have kind of figured out what the school year will look like, the next thing you're going to do is learn about different methods and styles of homeschooling. And that helps kind of determine what might work best for your unique family and individual students. So I want you guys to keep that in mind when we talk to our wonderful panelists, because they all do homeschool a little bit different, or a lot different, depending on the curriculum that they use or their kind of mission and vision for their homeschool. So our panel is filled with experienced homeschool parents, and they're really excited to share with you. But keep an open mind, because there is no one right answer. That's what you need to take away from this panel, is that everyone is doing it the best way for their family. So after you leave our panel today, you want to familiarize yourself with different curriculum and different styles. You know, there is a million different ways to homeschool. So when you're ready, once you kind of figure out what style of homeschool or method of homeschool you want to follow, it's time to create a schedule. So for me, being the logical thinker that I am, I needed something that was laid out for the whole school year. It helped me to know that school lasts 36 weeks. Now some schools go a little longer, some are shorter, but 36 weeks is your average school year. So for me, I literally sat down with a calendar. I marked off all the holidays. I also marked off some extra time here and there. Like we would take a whole month off for Christmas. And so I would just mark that off the calendar. We're not doing school those days. I would mark off family vacations or trips that I already had planned, anytime that I didn't expect my kids to do schoolwork. Also their birthdays, that was a big deal for us in our family. Birthdays are important. And so we would mark off that day and we would plan a fun family field trip. So no school was done on those days either. But then I could see where my 36 weeks fit in. And I'm sure you can imagine that it took us all year to get those 36 weeks in, but that's all right. We wanted breaks all throughout the year. So then I would actually I would look at, let's say, their math book, and look in their math book and see how many lessons were in that math book. And I would divide it by 36. And so that told me, on average, my student needed to complete X number of math lessons a week for our 36 weeks to finish the math book. Now you all should be aware that no course ever completely finishes a textbook. Public school, college, it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to do every single thing in a textbook. Your homeschool doesn't need to be any different. So even though I made that plan and I had that goal, we very rarely met the goal and completed everything. So I think that is the end. So I have questions and I have my email. I'll put this in the chat also. But Shelby, were there any questions before we launch into the panel?
Yeah, there were a couple of questions. Let me scoot up here. So we were asked, what about children with special needs? Do they need to meet the 13th percentile?
Yes, they do need to meet the 13th percentile. But what you need to keep in mind is that your student's age and grade are not connected. So when you fill out the notice of intent, you're indicating your student's age. You are not telling the state what grade your student is in. So it is up to you as a homeschool parent to determine what grade your student is in. So it is very possible to have a special needs student who is never at that grade age equivalent. So when your student completes the 3rd grade curriculum, then you would want to test or have them evaluated, but not until. So a third grader, you know, could be 8, they could be 18. It doesn't matter. So that is what you need to keep in mind. And you can have them evaluated, which doesn't require testing or the 13th percentile. The evaluator is only looking to see if your child is working up to their age and ability level and making progress. So maybe that's where you as the parent make that decision. Also, with the testing requirements, let's just play devil's advocate for a minute and I test my student and they don't score above the 13th percentile. What that has told me is that my student hasn't mastered that grade level of work. So that's telling me as the homeschool parent that I need to scoot back, that I need to repeat that grade or maybe go back 2 grades, that my student isn't where I think they should be. So therefore, I'm not going to mail in that test result to my local school district. That's not how, I mean, I'm using it for my own information and my student is obviously not ready to move up to the next grade. So I don't need to report that. My student's going to repeat the grade they're in. I think there's, Shelby, were there more responses?
Yeah, so our district's NOI asked for the grade level.
So don't fill it in. You don't have to. According to the homeschool law, it's name, age, and address, and how many hours you plan to homeschool this year. So just leave that part blank.
All right, and then we did have one more question. How do you recommend going about starting with young ones? I am starting research and would be starting with a preschooler.
I would focus on fun. Preschool, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, it needs to be fun. Education should be fun. So I would not do anything structured. One of my favorite books is What Your Kindergartner Needs to Know. It goes from kindergarten through 6th grade. The author is E.D. Hirsch, and he kind of goes over the core curriculum. So he goes over those pieces that are age appropriate for, say, a kindergartner to be learning. And so I would use that as kind of my backbone to hang things off of that we do that are fun, because then that helps you know what's sort of age appropriate for your preschooler, although kindergarten would be a little more. But yeah, I would just focus on fun. I would follow their interests. I would work on pushing them to the next level. So, you know, like if I'm trying to think of a good example, you know, like with your kids when they're telling time and they start with the basics, like hour and half hour. And once they seem pretty good at that, then push them to the next. So what do these other numbers mean? Or what is it, where would the hands be if it was quarter after? You know, ask it in a little different question and help kind of push their knowledge and their critical thinking skills, even as a preschooler. So, but no, my advice for you would be fun, fun, fun.
Thank you, Teresa.
Sure. All right. So we want to launch into the panelists. Joy, did you want to do the introductions or am I doing the introductions? Or I guess everybody's introducing themselves.
Yeah, I think that would work well if you just want to cue everybody up.
Perfect. I can do that. And you guys don't need me to share my screen now. All right, so welcome everyone to our panel of experienced, wonderful, knowledgeable, full of skills, amazing homeschool parents. And actually homeschool moms, I think we're all moms. Yep, we are. All right, so I'm gonna let you guys introduce yourself. So I want you to tell a little bit, well, obviously your name, students and their ages, and how long you've been homeschooling for. So I'm going to start with Ashley. You're going to go first.
Hello, my name is Ashley Newberg. I am an unschooling mom of 3 daughters. They are 1, 5, and about to turn 9. And my husband and I were both homeschooled growing up. And so we kind of always knew we wanted to homeschool. And then somewhere along the way found out about unschooling, and that just really fit our family. So we've been doing it from the beginning.
Nice. Welcome, Ashley. Noelle, you're up.
Yes, I'm Noelle Ferris, and I have 5 kids. They are 15, 13, 12, 9, and almost 5. And we started homeschooling when my oldest was going into kindergarten, and she's going into 10th grade now. So this is my 11th year.
That's exciting. Welcome. All right, Kate, your turn.
Yes, hi, I'm Kate Weiss. I have 3 kids that I homeschool. They're 13, 10, and 7. And I say that I'm an accidental homeschooler. We started also homeschooling when my oldest went into kindergarten. And I had a brand new baby that came about a week before school started. And all the driving around for kindergarten felt like a bit much. So we dove into homeschool, and we've been doing it ever since.
Nice. All right. Thank you, Kate. Yvonne, you're next.
Hi, I'm Yvonne Strawn. I have 5 children. They range from 20 down to 7. So my youngest is a first grader. I've been homeschooling for 12 years. My oldest went to a school for a few years, and I had wanted to homeschool. And my husband and I didn't talk about it, but then one day he said, "Do you want to homeschool?" I was like, yeah, I couldn't believe it. So we've been homeschooling for over 12 years. It's been absolutely a wonderful blessing. I've enjoyed every minute. My oldest, actually, she's 20, but she's going to be graduating this year because she's a special needs kid. She has 1 X chromosome. She has Turner syndrome. So we had some struggles along the way, but she is absolutely amazing. She's wrote a book, and she's going to probably be going on to editing and copywriting. So you can do it. And it's just been a great journey.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Kelly, your turn.
Hey, I have an 11-year-old son and an 8-year-old girl. And I was a public school music teacher for 11 years. When I met my husband, he was living in rural Missouri, and everyone he knew had 11 kids and homeschooled. And I just said, before we keep dating and we get more serious, I just need you to know that I'm not having 11 kids and I'm not homeschooling. So our first year of marriage, before we even had our first child, I came home one day and I was like, I think I want to eat those words. And so we've been homeschooling our kids' whole education journey so far.
Nice. All right, Sarah, it's your turn.
Hi there, I'm Sarah Moon, and I have 5 kids. They are 13, 11, 8, 6, and 6. We have been homeschooling for 5 years now, when my oldest were in 3rd grade and 1st grade. And we're doing world schooling, so lots of travel and fun, and enjoy the heck out of it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. All right, now we're going to dig in a little bit more to how you homeschool. And so we're going to start back with Ashley. And what we want to know is, what method do you use to homeschool? And what is a typical day like?
Yeah, so we unschool. And I don't know if we really have a typical day, which is what is so fun about it. Unschooling is essentially child-led learning. And I asked my daughter recently how she would define unschooling. What she said is that unschooling is basically a school where your kids can do whatever they want and learn from that. And I think that's the perfect definition. We do what we want, we do what we're interested in, we do what's fun. It's really cool to be able to see like what each of them are interested in and be able to support them through that. And so we don't do any sort of planned or structured things. Not that we don't have structure or we don't have plans, but it's all based on what does everybody want to do and how do we fit all of those needs together. And so, a lot of times that looks like my oldest is really into, gaming. She loves gaming, Minecraft, Roblox, all of these things. And she makes YouTube videos. And so, some of our supporting her in that has been like helping her create a recording studio where she can record her videos and play her games. She plays games online with her friends. And then my 5-year-old right now is really into like fashion and makeup and design and all of these things that I know nothing about. And so it's been really fun to learn from her as she's learning. We watch a lot of YouTube videos, looking things up, like how to do this, what is this about? And we love to explore and adventure and go places. And, that's been hard the last couple of years with things being closed, but we're, figuring it out as we go, and how to get those needs met in an environment where we can't always do all of the things that we want to be able to do. So it's just a lot of kind of randomness and fun and spontaneity, and that's what we love about it.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, Noelle, how about if you tell us about how you homeschool and what your typical day looks like?
Yes, and I am outside, so if somebody can tell me if it's like, if the wind is too loud or anything, I'll move in. So we follow a lot of the ideas of Charlotte Mason, who was a British educator like in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And she was really involved in a lot of educational reform because, in her words, children are born persons. And she meant that they're not just a blank slate for us to write on because they have potential to become more, but because from the beginning, they are full persons. So I guess some hallmarks of Charlotte Mason education would be the use of living books, which a lot of you might know what that is, but a living book would be different than a textbook. It would probably be written by one author instead of a bunch of people. It would be written like in a literary or narrative style, stories that would like spark your imagination and inspire, full of ideas and not just dry facts, I guess. So living books versus textbooks, a lot of a lot of time in and study of nature, exposure to great works of art and music, the skill of narration, which is just telling back what you heard, a great way to learn, a lot harder than it sounds, narration, and then also just the idea of training kids in good habits and pursuing virtue. So something I love about that method is that it is a method versus a system. And so I feel like there's a lot of freedom, a lot of flexibility. Charlotte Mason said that the test of a generous education was stability of mind and magnanimity of character, and magnanimity meaning greatness of soul. And I think about, I want my kids to be courageous and selfless and have an idea of living for something or someone beyond themselves. And so that is, I feel like that's kind of the Charlotte Mason method, I guess, in a nutshell. So we follow those ideas or principles. And we're part of a Charlotte Mason homeschool group here in town called Journey School. We've been there for, I think this will be our 8th year. I direct it now, but that's because I love having some kind of communal aspect to education. Even though I love homeschooling, I still like the idea of kind of doing it in community. So we do that. My elementary school age kids also participate in a program called Forest Box, which I could tell anybody more about, but it's great. So once a month we pick up this like fabulously curated box of books and materials to do kind of our own forest school at home, a lot of outdoor nature related things. So that's what we do. A typical day. Yeah, I agree. Even with Ashley, not every day of our week is a little bit different, but because I didn't mention my 3 oldest kids this year are all going to be in another program called Haven. It's a newer program. So they are gone 2 days a week. So it's a little bit, so my 2 oldest did that last year. So for a typical day, like on days that we're all home, we would usually have breakfast together. During that time, we're Christians, and so we read the Bible, we sing a hymn, we're always working on memorizing scripture together. We talk about world events. So we do that, and then we move into math. And a lot of my kids still need my help with math, so I kind of rotate through. And then when I'm not with them, they work on things independently. So for my older kids, they've got assignments from their teachers at Haven. They know what they can do without me. And for my younger kids, every night for the next day, I write out an independent list for them. So it might just have things like write your spelling words, draw something in your nature notebook, do independent reading, do your typing. So they have things they can work on. So we kind of all rotate through math, and then we do a block of what I'd call language arts. So anything kind of reading, writing related. Again, this is more my younger kids. The older ones design their time a little bit more by themselves now. And then we would do either history or science. I never do those two things on the same day. So we would do one of those things, and that would always include some kind of reading aloud and illustrating or investigating something. And then after lunch, my kids kind of could finish their own independent work and piano practice. And maybe we have a rest time. I can do some other things. And then in the late afternoon, we have tea time, which some of you as homeschoolers might be familiar with the concept of morning time. And so we did this in the morning for a lot of years. And then last year we switched it up because it worked a lot better with my older kids to have a tea time in the afternoon. Usually there's some good food involved, which for teenage boys is like, they'll be there for that. But that's what we do. So I've got a girl who's going to be kindergarten this year up to 10th grade. And so this is the thing that we all do together. And it's when we do, we read a lot. So we might read a Shakespeare story. We work on reading and memorizing poetry together. We might do some geography. We like missionary biographies. We would do like a picture study with a great work of art, listen to some music from our term composer, lots of different things. And I would never do all of that in one day. But that tea time can be like 30 minutes to an hour and a half, just kind of depending. It's flexible. But that's, for me, like I love having something that we can all do together. So that's kind of what a typical day for us would look like if we're all at home.
Perfect. That's awesome. Okay, Kate, it's your turn.
Yes, we do a hybrid program. Most of the districts, if not all of the districts in the Colorado Springs area, offer some sort of a homeschool hybrid program, maybe through a charter school, and there's a variety. This year I have 2 kids who will be attending the Cottage School TCA, which is more of a language arts based program. They go 1 full day a week, and they get a lot of their language arts instruction through that school. My middle child, he's a boy, and he's going to be attending more of a STEM program this year. That's through District 49. It's called Aero Labs, and it's more aerospace engineering related. He's very excited for that. So the different, depending on which hybrid program you would select, they come home with homework. My kids who have done the Cottage School come home with some language arts homework. And so they all have that to do during the week. And then as far as typical days go, the 2 days that the kids, varieties of the kids are at school, those are kind of the days we focus on more individualized learning with my kids who are home. And then the 3 days that we are all home together, similar to what Noelle has shared, we start kind of with together time in the morning where we do some of the subjects that we're learning congruently. And then as the day progresses, we break out and the kids do their independent math and reading and language arts, things that they're more at different grade levels for. We're usually done by about lunchtime with kind of our classroom work, which we love. And then that leaves time in the afternoon for art, or my son is really into learning how to tie flies for fly fishing right now, music, just sort of more independent, student-led types of activities for the afternoon. So that's what we do and what our typical days look like.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. Yvonne, it's your turn.
Hi, I do more of the traditional type homeschooling. Actually, we work from harder to easier. So they do their harder subjects more in the morning, and then by afternoon, usually we are able to do piano, art classes, things like that. And usually we do that in group settings, or sometimes depending on their interests on their own. And so with the traditional homeschooling, it's not like we're just doing the books all day. We have all kinds of interests in our family. My oldest one, like I mentioned before, has written a book. So we did a special program with her called the 1 Year Adventure Novel. And that was really fun for her. And she also edits and is wanting to get into editing and copywriting. She edited my book. I did a book on homeschooling, inspirational homeschooling. And the second one, she was into cakes. And so she has her own Facebook page and she sells cakes and gets cake orders all the time. And so that's kind of her thing. Also, I have one that soloed in gliders last year. She's done the Aero Lab program as well, like another mom has mentioned. And she's in flight school this year. And then my third one, he likes to build robots. He's built lots of different robots, and he's also just joined the Aero Lab to do the RC aircraft and the drone, which is fun for him because that's right up his line with the robots. And the other ones are younger yet, so I'm teaching them to read. I love teaching the littlest ones to read. That's been just so precious. Each one I've got to teach. So, I just feel like the older ones with the harder courses, we do outsource some of that. So we have video lessons that they watch here at home, and I still am in charge of all their work and everything, but I cannot teach pre-calculus or physics, but yet I do want to prepare my older kids for some of the different avenues that they're wanting to go toward. So my second one, she would really like to go to the Air Force Academy or ROTC. And you need to have some pretty heavy academics for that to get in there, along with, some different things. So she's in Civil Air Patrol and in sports, and she's pretty busy. But I'm very thankful to be able to help her and guide her along the way. But we work with each of our kids and work towards their goals and interests along with their academics. And the traditionals just really worked well for us.
Perfect. So would you say there's a particular method or just a traditional kind of
Okay, so I would say most of what we use is traditional because we do work through all of the subjects, and we just work from our harder subjects into the easier subjects. And I do all the grading and everything, and we test every year just to know where they're at. And also for me, just to be able to, prove some of the milestones, especially if they're wanting to do something more rigorous, a more rigorous college, or like I said, if my one does want to go into the Air Force Academy or something like that, I'll need to be able to prove that. So working with that traditional method has worked well for us just in the instances of where they're wanting to go.
Perfect. I love it. Thank you so much, Yvonne. All right, Kelly, it's your turn.
It is so fun for me to hear these different kind of day in the life. And it makes me realize that when Joy asked me, what philosophy or whatever should I put by your name? And I was like, eclectic. And I think because some days my days look like Ashley's and some days they look like Noelle's, and just, I think I realized, especially coming out of a public school education background, that I really had a desire to have our days look a lot more like traditional school's days when my son began kindergarten. And instead of having circle time in the morning, we were going to have triangle time because there were 3 of us. So I just had a whole wall of our house plastered with cute vintage chalkboards and posters and learning aids. And we were going to sit in front of that wall and we were going to just go through this very long list I had of all the things I wanted to do. And very quickly I learned that just because you want to do something one way might not be the best way for your child. And so it has been a learning and growing just journey for us the whole way through. And this is our 7th year, and I feel like we've just continued to learn, and each year looks a little bit different. One thing that has stayed fairly consistent for us that it has become really important to us is that every week we have a play and project day. So it is a day where I do not plan anything. And it is a day for me to either prep for school stuff or just to get some housework done or just to read a book if it's one of those weeks that I'm really, really tired. And that only like formally schooling 4 days a week has been a really great fit for our family. And we feel like we don't ever stop learning. So I don't keep strict records of the hours that we do because I know we are homeschooling on Christmas break when we are with my father-in-law, who's a professor, and he's quizzing the kids on different things from science and math and dinner table conversations. There's just so much that I see my kids getting really valuable education from that is not something that I specifically planned and implemented. So I count all that stuff. And I feel like we homeschool 365 days a year, even though we don't say this is a school day every Saturday or Sunday, or, even that one day a week that they are allowed to play or do projects of their own choosing. And if they need help or guidance, or they ask questions and say, well, I'm trying to do this and I really want to build this in Lego. Well, let's, check out a book about that, or let's see if there's a YouTube video, or so that's kind of how it works for us.
Wonderful. I once heard that homeschooling is a way of life, not a school choice. Like it encompasses and bleeds into everything. I totally agree with you. All right. Thank you, Kelly. Sarah, it's your turn.
Hi. So I do world schooling, and world schooling can take many, many forms. There are world schoolers who do, the school at home where they're using a curriculum and sitting down a period of time each day, no matter where in the world they are. So it's kind of school at home on the road. Kind of set up, to an unschooling approach, which is more like what I do, where I use travel as a form of strewing and driving interest and exploration among the kids. And we have a belief, and I'm glad that you talked about it, Kelly, that, human beings are learning all the time. It's like breathing, and we can't stop it. And so we just try to support that in any way, and know that experiential learning is kind of the stickiest kind of learning there is. And so the goal to world schooling is giving the kids that hands-on experiential, life experience of traveling around the world, to really normalize and internalize the fact that there are no borders to the choices that they can make, or where they can live, or what they can choose to do in life. And so our days vary dramatically depending on where in the world we are, and depending on which child it is. My children have very different interests spanning the 5 different children. And so we could be doing an all-day downhill bike ride one day, and we could be driving all day long while the kids are, we've got Wi-Fi in the truck, and the kids are all playing a raucous game of Among Us against each other and 10 other friends, in different places in the world. Or we could be, you know, mountain biking, and then the kids who aren't interested in mountain biking are, you know, at the Airbnb home doing what they want to do. The older kids, not the younger kids, but you know, that we balance that out. And they might be reading all day long while the rest of us are climbing, you know, around the house where we're staying. Or one of my really good world schooling tips is to always stay as close as possible to whatever thing you want to be doing and experience you want to be having. And so especially with 5 kids and kids who have different interests, if we're at the beach and we're at a condo on the beach, then you can have one kid at the balcony reading and you can see them from the beach, you know, and you can still be managing the kids who like really active things and the kids who are more, you know, the 2-dimensional, like reading books, doing worksheets type of kids, which I have both. And so it's really incredible to be able to support both kinds or all different, the spectrum of my children. And the other thing about world schooling and kind of the unschooling style that we use is that strewing and giving them the different ideas of interesting things that they can latch onto. And then when you see a child be very interested in something, then you give them additional materials, find resources, help them find resources, potentially out school classes or a mentor, whatever else, give them the tools they need to go forward. And that's how we do it.
All right. Thank you so much, Sarah. I think my big takeaway, and I think you guys heard this too, is that really the lesson here is there is no typical day, even within your own homeschool. So don't aim for an unachievable goal and go with what your kids need. So thank you so much for sharing, guys. Our next question is going to be about challenges. We know that everything in life comes with challenges and successes. So what we want to know is a challenge that you have faced in your homeschooling journey and how you overcame it. So I'm going to start back again with Ashley. We'll just keep going in a circle.
Yeah, so you know, one of the basis of like unschooling for us is the idea that we learn what is relevant to our lives. You know, we very naturally, you know, pick up what's around us, what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're feeling, because it's relevant to our life and we need to know it. And one of the challenges that we've had, we're a family of neurodiverse, you know, individuals, and so kind of like what Sarah was saying with presenting all the options, like giving, you know, giving them ideas of like, this is what you have access to, this is what you can do. One of the things that we have kind of forgotten several times in our unschooling journey is that where, you know, where we're like, you can do whatever you want to do, like, you know, whatever you want, just tell us, we'll help you, we'll support you. And then we forget that they don't really know what the options are. They don't necessarily know that what they can ask for or what's possible or what they can do. And so that's been a challenge for us at times where we remember like, oh yeah, like we're totally on board with doing whatever they want and following their lead and digging into their interests. And then we forget that they don't necessarily know as much as we do about what the options are. And, you know, and when we catch ourselves in that place, we're like, we bring it back around like, oh, okay, this is what they're interested in. And now we can bring out all the resources for them and show them what's possible, so that we can really be supporting them in what they want instead of just like, yeah, you just let us know.
Exactly. Because we don't know what we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so true. Thank you, Ashley. All right, Noelle. Tell us about a challenge.
I think that you know, a challenge for me is also, it's also something that it's something that I love, and that's just having like a lot of you, having that big age spread of kids, you know, so it's one of my favorite parts about homeschooling, but it is a challenge just to figure out how to meet all the different needs, where to really encourage independence, older kids, you know, desiring to do more activities, and just that, I guess, constantly thinking about what my priorities should be and what respect mindful of my kids and what their interests and desires are. So I think that, and then I think also the challenge of I don't know, just maybe pushing back against a culture and my own personality that says like you can do everything, you can do all of it, because you really can't. So I think building in space for building in margin and space for rest is something I really believe in, but I think it's a fight to make that reality. So something that has helped me in that maybe, I remember somebody saying to me once, you know, when things are really busy or overwhelming, if you just remember, like, read something together, do a little bit of math, a little bit of writing, go outside, look at something beautiful. It doesn't have to be complicated. Each thing you do doesn't have to take a long time. It can be simple.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think that's a challenge that a lot of us face. All right. So Kate, it's your turn.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest challenges has been we live in this world where we have so much information, and there are so many wonderful homeschool blogs and homeschool Instagram accounts. And even just in this group here, there's so many different styles and preferences that are represented, and finding our way and being intentional to be considerate of what works best for our family, and maybe take a little bit of wisdom from this person and a little bit of wisdom from this person, and not feeling like we have to fit into the way this person does everything that looks perfect for their family, or the way this person does, being fluid and being okay with being fluid, and not feeling bad about that, not feeling bad about abandoning something that doesn't work for us, even if it looks really great with this mom over here who's doing an awesome job with it. So just staying in our lane, I guess, is kind of the way I look at it, that, not being distracted by all of the amazing things out there, but taking bits and pieces that are pertinent to our life and our kids and their interests and the way they learn, and the time and the money that we have. And then being confident with that and going with it and enjoying the process.
Perfect. That sounds great. I totally can hear you. There's so much out there. All right. So Yvonne, it's your turn.
Okay, so mine a little bit different. I have a special needs child. So when she got to be, she was like mid-elementary, I had gotten to a point where I just didn't know how to help her. And my husband and I were talking, and we're like, well, do we need to put her in public school? Whatever, to figure out how to help her, because I was just struggling so bad. And I tell you, when your child is struggling, that hurts, But what I realized in that, I really realized one of the biggest reasons I wanted to homeschool is because I wanted my children to know that they were valued and they were valuable. And I didn't want them segregated into a special group. I didn't want somebody to seem better, if they were into a separate group, like in a public school or something. And so I really learned how to reach out and find resources that would help me help her. And we started using occupational therapy for the everyday type of things. Vacuuming was hard. Even just some of the different things to help her with laundry and what you can do, like with markers and tape and, marking things and whatnot. And, just helping her in whatever way I can where she is at. And then feeling more confident in that and being able to overcome that now that she's 20, and just really seeing that, wow, I'm so glad that I spent all those years with her, and she's always happy, and she's thriving in her own way. And we can do that as homeschool moms. We see our kids every day. We know what they need. Sometimes we have to reach out for resources to get the help that we need to help them, but we can do it.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. All right, Kelly, you're up.
Forgot to unmute. Sorry. These are beautiful stories and I relate to so much. I had written down beforehand that my biggest challenge was second guessing myself. And I think that it plays into all of these things, like exactly what you were saying, Ashley, about forgetting that they don't know what they don't know. And just remembering, oh yeah, like because I wanted my kids, I said, what do you want to study for history? Well, they don't know, anything beyond their own lives. And so I have to so this year what we did was introduce some different historical movies. And then I was able to say, okay, well, which of these movies do you think you want to kind of go further and learn more about what life was like in that time period? Because I realized if I just said, tell me a time of history you want to learn, they didn't know. And with having so many options, this is an amazing place to homeschool. PPLD is amazing with just giving us tons of resources and programs and options. But I think learning, I can't remember who said it, but just to be confident, to trust yourself, and to not spend all your time spinning your wheels about, well, should we do this thing or this thing? And this thing looks really good. How can we say no to that? But I agree about the idea of being at rest within your family. One reason we chose to homeschool is because we didn't want to be running around all the time. So if I just substitute running to and from car loop for a traditional school and running to all these sports practices after school, if I just substitute that with going all over town and traveling and to do all the kinds of schooling that looks so fun, then I'm not actually achieving my goal. So I think sometimes for me, the best thing to do with some of my biggest challenges, such as second guessing, are to put some things on paper and be able to look at it a little bit more objectively, get it out of my head and say, okay, what is it that I really want? And then what are the steps to get there?
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, Sarah, what's your biggest challenge?
My biggest challenge is juggling 5 kids and homeschooling, being a single mom. Figuring out how to balance the costs and working and getting enough connection with each of the kids, making sure I'm supporting each of my kids in their unique ways. And then making sure that I have time for me. For a very, very long time, I forgot about that part, and that created its own problems. I've realized that that's one of the most important pieces, is that self-care piece, and making sure that I'm getting what I need so that then I can be the best mom and have the best energy and figure out all of these other problems that are hard to solve. I tell my kids a lot, I wish I was an octopus, because I would love to have 8 arms. Because 2 sometimes seemed like not enough with all of that, but we make it work, and it's just one day at a time. And like you said, Kelly, trusting yourself and getting that, reaching out and getting that support. So I was really excited that, Teresa, you had that as one of your items, to start with, is getting that support. And I would definitely say Facebook's been the best place for me to find like-minded people. And once you get far enough down the path, they start to come to you also, which is really cool. And so that support network and balancing it all as a single mom, for sure.
Definitely. Thank you. All right. So I think this is going to be our last question. Time has just flown. You guys have such good insight and information. So my last question for you guys is, what is one piece of advice you would give your pre-homeschool self?
For me, I would say like the relationship is more important than everything else. There's nothing that's worth damaging the relationships that we have in our family. And whatever things that we have in our head, the ideas of like, they should be doing this, they have to do this, the expectations, that it's not going to look the same for every kid, and it's not worth trying to force things that aren't working. My oldest daughter just recently learned to read. She's almost 9, and she did it all by playing video games, and that's the method that worked best for her. So like when we tried pushing it too soon, it wasn't fun for anybody. And so I would say that like that relationship piece and everybody feeling good about it is more important than any, milestone that we decide that they need to, meet at a certain point.
I love that. Relationships are top priority. Thank you, Ashley. All right, Noelle, what is one piece of advice you would give your pre-homeschool self?
I think just to remember that the kids are going to be fine. They're going to be just fine. They, we love them and teach them and pour our lives into them, and they develop into interesting people with their own interests that, I think of a quote that says, there's no education except self-education. That they can learn, and they will jump into what they love, and they will be okay.
I love that. Kids will be okay. Perfect. All right, Kate, your turn.
I think one thing for me that I wish I would have known is it's okay to switch course, to abandon curriculum that's not working, to change things up. My first couple years, I remember making these perfect plans with 10 subjects that we were going to cover in a day, and felt so badly if things were going bad and I wasn't. And now I'm like, you know what? If something's not working, there's something better for the kids, and there's something different out there that will be a better fit for us. The second thing I wish I would have known is it's okay for our homeschooling days not to look like a traditional public school day. Lots of outside people who don't understand homeschooling asking questions about, well, your kids just played all afternoon or what, and it's very different having one-on-one intentional time with each child versus a public school teacher who's managing a class of 20, 30 students, and how the days look and what they're learning and how they're learning. And that's the benefit of homeschooling, is that my kids aren't sitting at a table for 7 hours doing worksheets, and just growing in confidence that that's a good thing. And it doesn't have to look like their day would look if they were in public school.
That is so true. Your day should look the way it should for you. I love that. And not being afraid to change. I like that advice too. All right, Yvonne, you're up.
Okay, I would just say to pay attention to what's most important to you, your spouse, and your children. You're going to see everybody else's ideas of how to homeschool and what they're doing. And sometimes it's going to be like, oh, that is so great. And actually, every time I hear everybody else's story, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And oh, that's awesome. But really, when it comes down to it, it's what's important to you, what's important to your family. And you have to stick by that. And, your family is unique and special in its own way, and just celebrate that and work alongside who you are.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. Kelly, your turn.
I think my super short and sweet is doing one thing is better than planning 10 things. I can look for the best idea or think, well, if I presented this concept in these 10 ways I can find on Pinterest. No, just do something. Just do something. And then if they're still not getting it, you can look for another great idea, but one thing at a time, just do it.
I love that. Focus on one thing. Beautiful. All right, Sarah, one piece of advice.
I would say that the one thing that I bumbled through for the first couple of years is the idea that there's a curriculum or there's certain things that they need to learn by a certain age. And There is not one certain piece of knowledge that any one person or that everyone needs to know. Everybody has something different. And, I was one of those straight A students in public school, and I don't remember half of that. Half of what I learned, and it's okay. I still was very successful in my college career and life afterwards and all of that. And so we don't need to get hung up on one certain piece of knowledge because every human is different. And we can't know, only our kids will know the path that they're going to be taking and what they need. And knowledge is really cool where you can learn it just in time. Always, you can always go back and learn things that you missed. So yeah, that whole connection is so important, and trust yourself. I think it's all along the same lines. Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you, ladies, so much. And thank you for joining us today. You guys have shared so much with the audience and me. And if you're still thinking and trying to make that choice of homeschooling, I hope that you take everything you learned today and dig in some more and be brave and take the leap. You won't regret it.
Okay, that was really wonderful. I feel like I learned so much, and just how different all of you are and how similar also. It's wonderful. I think you can take the pieces that really work for your family and really fly with them. I mean, I could have sat with 5 more questions, but unfortunately we're running a little short on time. If you could all just sit tight for a minute, we might have like 3 minutes for questions, but I do just want to show one great resource to everybody. And I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. And hopefully you're all seeing this. This is our website. And I just do want to show you, if you go to the regular website and you hover over services, and then you click on the Homeschool Hub, there is a lot of information here. And I just want to show you 2 things. One of them is if you click on newsletters, you can sign up to receive information about homeschool programs. So you would just input your information here. And we do send a monthly blast of pretty much everything that's going on in the following month. So if you miss things on the calendar, that's a great way to find out about them. We also do a homeschool book list, which is fun to sign up for. The other thing I want to show you, if you click on the resources tab, and then you click on Homeschool Hub, there's some other LibGuides here that you might be interested in, but if you click on Homeschool Hub, there's a lot of information here. And what you would do is look at these different tabs. For example, Homeschool Basics lists the general homeschooling page, lists a lot of general information. There's a section on getting started. There's a section on Colorado Homeschool Law. And I just want to show you, we do have a big list of many different types of curriculum. And it can seem overwhelming. So just so you know, Kathy Duffy Reviews is a great way to get an overview of different curriculums and what they're all about. And again, going over to my left-hand side, Academics and Academic Support has some of our resources at the library. But if you do look at this, there is a section on testing and evaluations. And there's also a section on tutors and people who provide targeted support for different situations. It's not coming up too fast. Okay, there it is. So for example, there might be something focused more on STEM tutoring, math tutoring, all kinds of resources here. And another fun thing to look at is our extracurricular tab. And this is going to list places you can go in the community on field trips. It's also got different tabs for lessons and all kinds of clubs you might be interested in, like in music and the arts. There are specific homeschool bands. There are specific sports groups that cater to homeschoolers. under science and technology. That's where you would find, I believe, our the Homeschool Science Olympiad is listed there. So I just wanted to make you all aware that this is there, and it's a great place to find some additional information. And I just wanted to say thank you again to all of our experts, everybody on the panel, and Teresa. I feel like we need to reconvene to find out more. Shelby, were there any questions in the chat or? Oh, you're muted.
We have a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay.
All right. So our first one is, any recommendations or resources for children struggling with reading? And whoever feels comfortable answering that one.
Well, I'll share, because my oldest just recently learned to read. And, back several years ago when she first expressed interest in wanting to learn how to read, we tried a lot of different things, so I looked up, computer programs and games and books and apps and all of these different things. And we also read a lot, and we tried a lot of things. Some she was kind of interested in, nothing really stuck. And for her, it was like learning through what was relevant for her. And that was games, so Minecraft, Roblox, chatting with her friends, using Discord, things like that. She started with the voice to text, she would speak and it would show up as text. And so she learned how a lot of words were spelled that way. And so just having that added context for her was really helpful. So that's one way that, for my oldest daughter, she learned how to read.
Also, I put in the chat box, I think that All About Reading is a really great program for kids that are struggling, especially I have one kid who's dyslexic, and it was helpful to him. But I will say too, like, kids are not all ready to read at the same age. My kids have really displayed a variety. And my kid who's going in the 7th grade, he's the one who's dyslexic. And we did finally get a tutor for him. He had a tutor for a year that was really helpful. And he's a super hard worker, and now he's at grade level. But but that was a challenge for him. It was different than his older brother and sister, for sure, but he's okay.
All right. Do we have any more feedback?
I think that's one other really good thing to remember, is that when you have more than one kid, what completely works for one of them is probably not going to work for another one. So even when I was a public school teacher, I would reinvent things a lot. Like, every year is just not the same. Every class isn't the same. Every kid isn't the same. So it's okay to not find your one right way for your family, but the right way for each of your kids.
All right. I'm going to move on to the next question. What is an average cost for school supplies?
I'm going to jump in with an answer to that, and that can vary wildly because I could probably spend about $700 a year on slime supplies for my kids, or could spend thousands and thousands of dollars on different programs. So it really is going to come down to, what type of activities you're doing, whether you're using a curriculum or not, and, what kind of interests your kids have. So for me, that's a kind of a difficult question to ask, and really is going to be tailored to each individual family.
I'll jump into that too. We use the library system a lot. And for those of you who don't know, you can put books on hold and you can suspend holds. So if you are wanting to do a specific topic, maybe in December or January, and kind of plan out your year, that's a good way, to be more prepared, so that if you need a book right now, and they don't have it. But if you plan ahead a little bit, usually all those holds come in at the time when I need them. There's also so many excellent Facebook groups for used curriculum sales and local groups for used curriculum sales that you can find really excellent things for much cheaper than if you were to buy them new.
Okay, and you can definitely fit homeschooling in any budget. I'm sorry, Yvonne, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, that's okay. So I was just going to say pretty much the same as far as if you want to do something more on the cheaper side, there are lots of free resources out there. But then also if you want to get a full curriculum, you're going to look at probably about $800 or $900 for a full like traditional type curriculum.
Definitely. I know when we first started homeschooling a bazillion years ago, we didn't even have a computer. The internet wasn't really a thing. And so we spent days and days and days at the library and learned very quickly that 100 is the magic number. That is as many things as you can check out on one library card. Not many people know that.
You can also get library cards for each of your children as well.
Exactly. And it is possible to check out more than you can carry. Yes.
All right. Any more feedback on that question? Awesome. So Joy, this question is going to be more geared towards you. Our library, High Prairie, said they weren't going to start doing homeschool events again until next year. Any chance they could be encouraged to start back sooner?
We have a lot of different factors going on coming, well, at this point in the pandemic. And some of it is staffing and limits on how many people can be in a room at a time. So it looks like, you know, hopefully we're really aiming for a more regular schedule in January. That being said, we are going to be doing virtual programs again each month. So there'll be a homeschool one that releases, I think it's the third Tuesday, the video will release, and there'll be a take and make to follow up at some of the locations that you could go in and pick up the materials and then watch the video or follow the directions. I know we're also going to have a couple of live things. There's going to be a homeschool science coming up in September and October. One of those is, both of those are going to be at East, and they're going to be outside. So hopefully that'll alleviate some of the concerns. And those will need to be registered for, and those are on the third Friday. And then November, there's supposed to be one at 21C, and that's going to be indoors. So you could try and look for those, but you know, we're trying, we're kind of coming back slowly. So hang in there.
All right, next question. Any recommendations for parents looking to homeschool who also work full-time and will be looking to further their own careers as well? My husband and I worry about that balancing act.
Okay, I'll jump in here. There are different programs where your children can watch videos and you can help them out with that. If you're working from home, of course, if you're nearby, you can help them out anytime they need them at that point. So, you know, the video lessons are just a very big part of maybe being able to have them learn, or maybe even YouTube videos.
I'll add something. I would like just, I think that it's a good reminder that learning does happen at all hours of the day. And so you don't necessarily have to be doing that instruction between the 8 to 3, hour or whatever. And so it's very feasible if you have two parents that are both working to have childcare of some sort during the day, and then do your homeschooling activities, in the evenings and the weekends, if that's your schedule, or whatever works for your family. You don't necessarily have to have an educator being the one to do the childcare. You can have, just the babysitter and them doing the fun activities, and then do whatever style of homeschooling you want after hours also.
Yes, I also know when I was homeschooling and a single mom, that became pretty challenging when I worked outside of the home. And so I grouped up with other homeschool parents, and I would take on one subject, and then everybody kind of had one subject. And so I worked a 4-day work week. And so I would be home one day and have everybody's kids at my house for that day, so that those parents could do their work or get their to-do list done. But then I took care of teaching science to the group. And then my kids would then go to the other people's houses while I was working the rest of the week. And that worked fairly good.
We also, for my family, we did have more of a typical, like my husband would go to work all day, every day, and I would be home with the kids. And one of the goals that we had was to both be home. And so we didn't have that for about like 7 years, and we worked really hard to be able to create an environment where now we both work from home so that we can work around our schedules and like mesh all of that together. So there's always a way to, even if it doesn't work right now the way that you want it to, like what can you work towards to create, what works best for your family.
Any other feedback? Awesome. All right, one more question. Any other curriculum recommendations for math or writing, etc.? And some people already wrote some recommendations in the chat box, but for those of us not watching the chat box, if you have any recommendations. And there are actually a few comments on here, but Kate says we love Beast Academy for more advanced math students and Horizons for more traditional workbook math. And Julia Bogart's Brave Writer for writing.
I think so. I mean, yeah, this is such a hard question because, like you said, Teresa, there's just the amount is overwhelming. Lots of great, I won't mention any traditional math programs because there's a lot of good ones. We use, the last couple of years, we've used a program called Life of Fred. And I'm only mentioning it because it's not very traditional. It's pretty off the wall. But I think kids can still really learn math through it. So it's been a really good fit for us the last couple of years. But it is zany. I mean, so it's not your typical math program. For writing, for elementary school, I think like 3rd through 6th grade, I think Institute of Excellence in Writing, IEW, is a really solid program. I think there's a little bit of a learning curve to teaching it, but it's not super time consuming or difficult, but that's a really good one that has been great for my elementary school kids.
I think this is a great time when you're just starting to think about curriculum, is where you reach out and find that support and you ask them, hey, can I come over and just dig through your curriculum shelf? I'm just curious, what did you think of this? What worked well here? And you get to actually see. I know that when I was homeschooling too, Barnes and Noble would order books in. You could order books through them. They get them shipped to the store and you can go look at them without actually having to purchase them. So that kind of gave you that really cool, I want to take a look at it, but if I don't like it, I don't want to take it home with me.
Okay, well, I think we made it through quite a few. It looks like there's some great info in the chat as well. I would say, please email me if you have additional questions and I can try to address them. If you have a particular person you wanted to ask, I could try and send those on. Otherwise, I think, we are at 2:40, so I want to respect everybody's time. Thanks again so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. It was so informative. And this will be recorded. I'm sure this is going to put a lot of information in a lot of people's hands beyond our group today. And thanks, Teresa, for giving us the great overview and balance. Did you have anything else you wanted to add before we go? Or
No, I just want to say thank you. I miss those days when my kids were at home and they were crazy and nothing looked normal. So I appreciate you giving me a chance to relive those for a short amount of time. And I can only imagine that you inspired so many others. So thank you. Thanks for taking time out of your day.
Okay, thank you. I do appreciate it. Okay, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Have a good year.
Thank you.
You too.